Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Okay, I'm going to record. And I think we'll also, I do want to give a thank you to Melissa Giannotti, our librarian from Temple Isaiah. She is part of this call today, in part to be a helper in sort of tech support and other things. So Melissa, if you can mute everyone, that would be great. And we are going to get started. So I want to, oopsies, I got muted. Now I'm good. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to be part of this class about difficult conversations. And I want to start by acknowledging that this is a big topic. Difficult conversations are called that because they're difficult, right? These are the conversations that you know you're going to need to talk to somebody and you get that pit in your stomach because you're just like in knots about whatever that conversation is. Or sometimes you don't even know you're going to be in a difficult conversation, you know, like something starts happening in conversation and that knot builds, or you're like, wow, this is really hard to talk about, whatever the thing is. So I am hopeful that this series will be helpful to you. And while acknowledging that, you know, we can't do everything in 3 hours, but we'll start. The other thing I want to just start as a caveat is that I did teach an introductory session on this topic in June, and I know some of you were there and some of you were not in that session. So today we're going to start with some overview around this topic that is going to be repetitive for some of you that were there in June, but we are going to do some things today that are new, but definitely weeks 2 and 3 are going to be completely new. So that is the plan for this series. And because we're such a large group, for a lot of it, unfortunately, we'll need to keep everybody muted just because of the nature of the size group. But there are going to be a few times where we're going to divide into some breakouts just for a short period of time so that you can talk with somebody else about this. So the title of this series is called Difficult Conversations, and the focus of this series is on something called nonviolent communication. Some of you have a lot of experience with NVC, and for some of you, this is brand new. And so we're going to start with a little poll. Let's see if I know how to do this. Poll, here it is. So I'm going to launch this poll, and you can just tell us what is your background or experience with nonviolent communication. So go ahead and respond. And I don't know, can you guys see the poll as people are responding? Or no, like the results? No, okay. So I will wait in a minute and then we'll show you all. So the question is, what is your previous knowledge of or experience with this thing called nonviolent communication? Looks like a few more people are going to respond. And then I'll share the results with all of you. One sec. All right, couple more people gonna vote. All right, I think almost we're missing a few, but that's okay. So I'm gonna end this just so you can see. Okay, share results. Okay, hopefully you can see this now. So a little over half of you are brand new to this topic. Some of you attended the introduction by me, and that was your experience with this topic. And there are a small handful of you that either have some or a great deal of experience with this beyond the introductory session. So, so I wanted to make sure that we start there to recognize that some of you are coming in with really a lot of experience with this topic, and some are brand new. So I'm going to do my best to teach in a way that I hope will be helpful to everybody, but especially for those small number of you who have a lot of experience with NVC, this may feel a little bit introductory to you, and that's okay. Sometimes going back to the basics is helpful. So I hope that it will be. So we are going to start with just what is this thing called nonviolent communication. And I want to start by saying that the basis of it is something called needs consciousness. So it's the idea that all of our behavior, our words, and our actions are attempts to meet our needs. And that every single human being is a bundle of needs at all time. And these needs are not like, you know, I need some ice cream right now. They're basic human needs. So one of the needs is hunger, right? We might be hungry, and that's a basic human need for sustenance. But there's a whole bunch of other types of needs, and that at any given moment, some of our needs are met and some of our needs are unmet. And that all of our words and actions are a result of those met and unmet needs. We also are all a bundle of feelings. At all times, we have feelings. Sometimes our feelings are, just we're really calm. We're not even paying attention to our feelings. But that's just what it means to be human, is to have feelings. And so every single person has needs and feelings. That's what it is to be human. And so when we talk about conversation, and we talk about specifically this thing called nonviolent communication, which, by the way, the phrase nonviolent, to me, when I first heard it, seems so weird. Like, I don't think of myself as having violent conversations. Like, why do I need a learning about nonviolent communication? That's weird. But it comes out of the tradition of nonviolence, connected in actually with Martin Luther King Jr. and the idea of engaging in communication in which we really recognize the basic humanity of each person, and that we communicate in such a way that we stay attuned to that. So I'm going to share my screen with, because I have a slide that I want to show you. So one second. I think that this is going to work. Okay, so can you all see my screen now? Thumbs up. Okay, so I'm going to change my box so I can see some of you. Okay, so in any communication, there are three parts, and this is the framework for NVC, which is that there is something called attuned listening, there's something called attuned speaking, and then there's all the stuff going on underneath it. And there's a lot of ways of referring to what's underneath the speaking and the listening. Sometimes that's called sort of inner listening or an internal dialogue. When I first learned this, I learned the phrase mindful inner world, meaning there's something going on inside me while the speaking and the listening is happening. So there's a mindfulness aspect of it. And also another way of thinking about that box underneath is self-empathy, which is sort of where am I in this moment, and that kind of reflective piece in the communication. And the core principle of NVC is that everybody's needs matter. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. Everybody's needs matter. And remember that every human being is a bundle of met and unmet needs. So what I want you to do now is to take a look at the list of needs that I sent out in advance. If you have it printed, that's great. Sometimes it's just helpful to have in your hands. If not, Melissa is going to put a couple of links in the chat that you can look at to pull it up on your screen. You know what? Actually, I can also pull it up on my screen. One second. I'm going to stop my screen sharing so that I can share the list of needs with you. Now, there's not only one list of possible needs. There's actually many different lists that you could use, but they all get at the same thing, basically. So Melissa just put a link in the chat box, and I will share my screen with you. It's just if you have it yourself, it's easier for you to scroll through it. So can everybody see now the list of needs? Is it up on your screen? Yep. Okay. So these are some of the kinds of needs that every human being has. So we have some basic needs for physical sustenance. I mentioned before around food, but also things like health and movement and sleep and touch and water and things like that. We have the need for connection. There's a lot of different ways that connection plays itself out as a human need. We have a need for attention, a need for closeness, a need for support, a need for warmth. We need to know we matter. We have a need for acceptance, for care, for kindness, a need to be heard and seen. That is definitely a basic human need. We also have that need for community in terms of connection, that sense of belonging, inclusion, partnership, etc. There's a whole section of needs that are around freedom, autonomy, choice, the needs for relaxation, humor, joy, play, pleasure. There's a whole bunch of needs on the right-hand side of this sheet that are about meaning. Authenticity and purpose and self-acceptance and clarity and flow, et cetera, et cetera. So there are lots of needs. So one of the questions that I have for you in this moment is, what needs are alive in you right at this moment? Because remember, we're always a bundle of met and unmet needs. So you can try to think, which of these needs for me, when I say what they're alive in you, it means either it's something that really feels met right now, like, gosh, I'm really feeling that need for connection is being met. Or there's a need for learning, and that is a need that's maybe being met in this moment. But also, are there certain needs that are really unmet in this moment? So take a moment and just for your own self-reflection and think, what needs are met and unmet for me in this very moment? Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to just very briefly kind of reflect on that. Again, this is a big part of NVC, is the ability to identify needs. It's what's called a needs consciousness, that we are conscious of human needs that are kind of alive in this moment for ourselves and for the person that we're having this conversation with. So in addition to needs, there's also feelings. So what feelings are alive for us? What are the feelings that we feel? And I will say that one of the ways we talk about this with kids is being an emotion scientist, trying to pinpoint what is the emotion that I'm feeling right now. And it is a lot easier said than done. So there's going to be a link that I think Melissa will put into a list of feelings. And if you printed it for yourself, then take it out. This one especially is harder for me to share. I have it up on the screen, but it's a 2-page document, so it's a little bit hard to keep the whole thing in front of you at one time. So there are feelings that we have when our needs are being met. These are kind of the more positive feelings. We might be feeling excited or confident, engaged, exhilarated, hopeful, calm, peaceful, all those sorts of things. There's also the needs that we might feel, oh, oopsies. Let's see if I can get to page 2. Here we go. These are feelings we might experience when our needs are not being met. Hopefully you can see these. We might be feeling afraid, confused, annoyed, disconnected, fatigued. We might feel pain. We might feel agitated, alarmed, fragile, fidgety. I mean, there's, dozens and dozens of words we could use. I will say a major aspect of NVC is getting to be more attuned to feelings and needs and expanding our vocabulary. Because if I ask how you're feeling, most of us could probably come up with a list of 5 or 6 or 7 words of possible answers. I'm feeling happy, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, I'm calm, I'm excited. There might be a handful of other words, but there's tons of options actually. And sometimes really getting at the nuance of it makes a difference. So the more that we learn and expand our vocabulary, it can really help. In fact, in my household, we have this list of feelings up on our refrigerator, just in case we're not sure how we're feeling and we need to have some prompts to remind us. You can put a list of feelings or needs up somewhere in a visible space. So now that we have taken a moment to actually, I don't even think I asked you, take a moment to think what feelings are alive in me right now. Like, what am I feeling? Okay, so as I said, the foundation of NVC is that our inner life matters. It's this mindfulness element of noticing what are my feelings and needs, and am I honoring those? Am I recognizing what my own needs and feelings are in this situation? This is different. One of our participants said she made placemats out of them. That's an excellent idea. You could laminate them and put them as placemats. I love that suggestion. So we start there. We start with recognizing feelings and needs, and we'll see in a minute why that is really important for communication. So we are going to move to remember I said there's 3 parts of communication. There's listening, there's speaking, and there's all the stuff going on underneath it. So we're going to start today and spend the rest of our time today focused on the question of that listening section, that box. What is attuned listening? What does listening look like in the NVC context? I am assuming many on this call have had different training in listening, active listening, different ways of being a good listener. But I would say attuned listening or listening in an NVC approach might be a little bit different than what you are used to. So we are going to focus on that. And I am going to, again, share my screen. So one moment. Okay, I just want to make sure I do this correctly. Okay. So hopefully, can you all see my screen? So what we're talking about when we talk about that box of listening can also be called attuned listening, or another way that it is sometimes referred to is empathy. This is the focus on the other person in the conversation. So for now, we're going to talk about difficult conversations that are one-on-one. You know, a more advanced course in NVC could talk about how do you do this in groups of people, but we're going to start with just a one-on-one conversation that is going to be difficult. The listening part is around having empathy for the other person, which especially in a difficult conversation is really, really, really hard sometimes, right? Because all kinds of stuff come up for us. So next week, we're going to focus actually on that mindful inner world box. And in the last week, we're going to get to the speaking part because that is important. But we want to start with these other two places because I would say that's really, really hard for many of us. So what is attuned listening? So even though phrase attuned listening might be a bit of a misnomer because it includes speaking. So in NVC, this activity of speaking in the listening mode, in that empathy mode, is called giving empathy. So the purpose of speaking while you're in listening mode is to give empathy. So these are some habitual ways that we respond to people that's not attuned listening. Sometimes we evaluate, for better or for worse, the speaker's actions. Like they said something, we're like, oh, that was great of you that you did that. Or, oh gosh, why did you do that? Or, we're evaluating what they're saying. Sometimes we give advice. We just jump straight into, here's what I think you should do. I would say a lot of us have that habit. Another habit is they're telling us something and we jump to telling a similar story that happened to me. I totally know what you're experiencing. That happened to me one time. We start to share our own story. Another way that we often respond is by providing reassurance. Oh, it's going to be okay, that sort of thing. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things, but it's not attuned listening in this NVC mode. And you'll see later on that the whole goal of NVC is to be cognizant of your choices of how to respond in any moment and to be conscious of the choices that you're making. So these are all habitual ways. It's just habit. This is what some of us do out of habit. So we want to try to break the habit. So anyway, we might be providing reassurance. We might be responding with our own emotional response. Gosh, that makes me feel so sad, or, I'm so frustrated. We might encourage the speaker to have a broader perspective or look on the bright side. We might ask questions to get more information, meaning like, just because I'm curious, they're telling me about something and gosh, I'm curious about this aspect of the story. So I'm going to ask them more about this part of the story. That's a little different than trying to get at what they are interested in sharing, which is not always what I'm interested in knowing more about. Another habitual way of responding is to explain how the speaker brought this upon themselves. Of course, certainly in some challenging conversations, that's maybe where our mind goes, is like, well, gosh, this is happening because of you did X, Y, and Z. So again, some of these things may be useful sometimes, but they're habits and none of them are what we call attuned listening. So attuned listening has a quiet part and a not quiet part, a speaking part. Before I get there, I'm going to go back here. I want to ask you to take a moment to consider which of these habits do you often fall into? Just again, take a self-reflective moment. Say to yourself, what are my habits? Where do I usually default when I'm in a conversation with somebody? So take a moment and reflect on that for yourself. Okay. We all have habits, and we're not bad people for having these habits. And like I said, these aren't always bad things. It's just that they're not attuned listening. So if part of the goal of today's class is to think about how to engage in different ways with people in communicating and in a way that is filled with empathy, then these are habits we want to be aware of and try to kind of step out of that mode. All right, so now we're going to jump ahead to what is attuned listening. And we're going to start with what's called the quiet part. I would say this, of all the NVC pieces, is something many of you have probably heard before or learned before in different ways. In terms of, listening for curiosity, the goal is to listen for nuance. So when they're speaking, like what's underneath what they're speaking and being really curious about it. So instead of reacting with that sense of automatic judgment or advice or even reassurance, it's staying in the mode of curiosity and wanting to learn more. It's listening for emotional content. This is really big. What are the emotions that you're hearing underneath what they're saying? Because they might not say, I'm feeling X. They might just be telling you what they think about a particular thing. But what are you hearing for their feelings? And then also listening to what really matters to the speaker in this moment. Now, again, we're going to get to the speaking and the what's going on for you, because something might matter for you that's different than what matters for them. But in this attuned listening mode, your goal, your job is to try to really listen for what matters to the other person in that moment. Then we're also going to try to manage our own internal responses and kind of set that aside for now. To say, yeah, there's all this other stuff going on inside me. My inner monologue is, going on, but I'm going to try as best I can to stay with where the other person is, to listen without planning my response. I would say for me, that's very hard, but to try to just stick with where they are, to stay present as best you can. So like I said, this is something some of you have maybe heard before or tried before, but the attuned listening quiet part is especially helpful when you're trying to listen for that emotional content. What are the needs and feelings that are going on for this person right now? And so we're going to practice this. I am going to break you up into breakout rooms. You're just going to be with one other person, depending on I don't know if we have an even number, but you'll be with probably one other person. Or I guess if you're a couple, you might be with two people. But the goal here, each person in this dialogue is going to have 2 minutes. And the question that I want you to answer in your 2 minutes is, what is something that's on your mind right now? Something on your mind these days. It's a generic question, so that if you want to talk about something kind of like surface level, like, oh, I've been really thinking about this TV show I'm watching, whatever, that's fine. If you want to kind of go a little more deeper, something that's causing you some real whatever, angst, frustration, whatever it is, feel free. Go as deep or not as you want. We're not in a therapy session, but the purpose is for you to spend 2 minutes to answer the question, what's on your mind right now or these days? And the other person's job during that time is to do this quiet part of the attuned listening. So the other person is actually not going to speak in that moment. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. They're not going to speak. Their job is to do these things that were just on the previous slide. You're going to try to listen for nuance and curiosity. You're going to try to listen for emotional content. You're going to listen for what really matters to the speaker. Then after those 2 minutes are up, you are going to take a minute to just say, I think this is, what I heard. Kind of share that with them. Like, here's a couple things I heard. Like, did I get it? Are those feelings the right, did I guess the right things? And then we're going to flip flop. The other person is going to have their 2 minutes to say something that's on their mind, and the person is going to listen and try to see if you can kind of have that sense of curiosity, see if you can listen for feelings. I got a question about, can you provide us with a printout of the slides? Yes, we can send the slides to you afterwards. That's no problem. Okay, so it's going to take me just a second to do the breakout rooms, because I want to make sure that they're small enough to be able to have. Okay, so I think every room will have 2, possibly 3 people in it. I am going to, I don't know how the settings are right now. Sometimes a timer shows up. If a timer shows up, it may not be the correct time, because at the moment I don't have the ability to change it. So we're going to do this for a total of about 5 to 6 minutes. So you're going to have 2 minutes for one person and 30 seconds or a minute for the other one to just kind of respond with what they think they heard. And then the other person will have their 2 minutes to share something on your mind, and then another minute or so. So about 6 minutes, I guess, for this. So it's not super long. So here you go, and then we'll all come back together. Oh, here it goes. Hold on. Now I can do the, okay, so we're going to have a little timer that says 6 minutes. And okay, so here you go. Okay, Andy, let's see. Do you need help?
I'm good now. Just my internet connection flaked for a minute. It's
okay,
good.
so can you like join the room? Do I have to, let me see how I can do you have an invitation to go into a breakout room or no?
I do not.
Okay, let me try. hold on. It's not letting me move you. Let me see if I can. You're supposed to be with Steven Weinzimmer, it looks like, but that's not working. So let me move him. Oh, that's not working either. I wonder if I can do it again. Breakout rooms. Huh. All right. You don't have anywhere on your screen that says like join here?
Correct, I do not.
Okay, 1 second. Let me try to help you. Okay, I talked to Steven and he was going to try to come back into this room. We'll see if that happens. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Ah, well, Mike is here. Hey, Mike.
Hey, someone was in my room for just a minute. I saw some hand waving and then they disappeared.
Oh, no. Okay, well, you know what? Andy is here and Andy didn't end up in a room. We had some technical difficulties. So why don't you and Andy, I'm going to mute myself and you guys, we have 3 more minutes. So at least one of you share something on your mind and the other can practice. So
Okay, all
go
right.
for it.
Hi,
Hey.
Andy.
How do you do?
Good, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, what's on my mind is that I relocated and retired about 1.5 years ago, kind of abruptly. And it's very difficult. I feel like I'm in between 2 communities right now, Temple, Isaiah in Contra Costa County, where I lived for 20 plus years, and my new community where just combination of just getting myself settled and now with the pandemic, I've not really been able to reach out and build a community for myself. So
I muted.
All right. Yeah, everybody's muted for right now just because we're such a large group, but we're still missing like half the people. So in a minute, everybody else will automatically zoom back in. Here they come. It's like magic. They all appear in the room. All right. Hello. So welcome back. In theory, I should have given you a lot more time. This is why NVC training usually is much more than an hour, because you do need time for these sorts of things. But we're trying to kind of do it in this briefer way today. So I hope that that was an interesting experience in terms of sharing something that's on your mind. And when somebody is just trying to listen with curiosity, and particularly for the emotional content or the needs-based, what are the needs that are met or unmet in what the person is saying, and what are the emotions? And we haven't, in a minute, we're going to talk about the speaking part of attuned listening. I had only shared with you about the quiet part, and I asked the person who was being quiet to reflect a little bit just so you could see, like, were you getting it at least in your own head? We're going to talk now about how do you actually just do that in the conversation in a more natural way. And I will be curious how it feels as the speaker when you feel like somebody else is kind of getting it. Now, if they aren't getting it, right, then that's also frustrating. That brings up different feelings. Like, no, that's not at all what I'm trying to say or what I meant or how I'm feeling about this. So, so part of our goal is to really be as attuned. That's why it's called attuned listening. Like to be as attuned as possible. And again, the more we have the vocabulary to be nuanced and specific, it's not just, I'm sad or I'm even, angry. It could be a whole bunch of other nuanced layers of that. I'm infuriated, I'm trepidatious, I'm concerned, I'm fearful, I'm whatever. There's lots of different nuances that it could be. And the more that we get close to what it is, the more that the person who's speaking can really feel heard and can feel like, you get what they're saying. You may not agree with what they're saying. This is not about agreeing. This is about really getting where they're coming from, what they're feeling, and what their needs are in this moment. So let's talk for a moment about, I'm going to pull up on the screen the speaking part of attuned listening. So one moment, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see the aspects of attuned listening? Is that on there for you? Yep, okay. So this is the speaking part. And these slides, by the way, come from my teacher, Kathy Simon. And what I love about this slide is she says, these are some possibilities of what you might say when you're in the listening mode. And she adds, all of which can go wrong, meaning, it's hard. This is hard. The quiet part is the easier part. You're just listening and kind of thinking in your head. But when you start to speak, these are some things that you can do. So of course, body language and verbalizations that intend to send the message, I'm open, I'm listening. You can even say like, okay, like those sorts of things that are saying, I'm here, I'm with you, I'm really trying to listen. Sometimes you can have verbatim repetitions. It just reinforces that you're getting what they're saying. When they're saying, I miss him in 12 different ways, and I say, gosh, you really miss him. Like, that's just reinforcing what you're hearing. Now, again, this is not like, what's the right word? It's not meant to be like subversive or I can't think of the right word, but like parroting back in a way that's like not really listening. This is because you're trying to really listen. And so you're trying to repeat back what you're hearing that feels important in what they're saying. You can also give non-verbatim reflections to kind of reach for the reality, the energy that's underneath it. So somebody says, he's the biggest idiot I've ever met. And your response could be, you really don't like what he said. Like, you're not saying, oh, this person's an idiot or whatever, but what you're hearing underneath it is that, this person said something that's made you really upset. So you can notice that it sounds like you really don't like what he said. You can also guess at an underlying value. So this gets at the needs, but kind of using the language of values. So if somebody is saying, oh, our staff meetings are a waste of time, you could repeat back and say, it sounds like you think that, staff meetings are a waste of time, but also what is the unmet need there, right? There's a need for efficiency, a need for productivity, a need for, we'll go back to the one about being seen and heard. Maybe they feel like they're not seen and heard in staff meetings, so they're a waste of time. So you can guess at what's underneath what they're saying. It sounds like, and you can guess because it's a guess, it sounds like you would like our time together to be more productive. You're really looking for more productivity from our meetings, or more meaningful. Now, again, the person might say, no, that's not at all what I mean. So then you were wrong. That's okay. It's okay to guess something that's wrong, but they might say, yeah, that's exactly it. So again, you're trying to really, remember, we're not in the speaking part of NVC. We're going to get there eventually, 2 weeks from now. We're starting with just listening. I'm trying to really, really, really understand what this other person is saying in terms of what they're feeling and what their needs are. You can also invite them to go deeper or more, but the way to do that is usually something kind of general, like tell me more, or, I really want to understand. My favorite sort of expression in this is there more? And not in a flippant way, but like, I'm really curious, like, is there more to what you are talking about? I know when I meet with people, even for Temple Isaiah, and they've told me all the things they want to tell me, sometimes I say at the end of all listening and stuff, I say, is there more? And very often there's more. So it's not a bad idea to ask for if there's more. And often the more is the real thing, that all the rest was the preamble. So you really want to like get to the fullest part of this story. And another question you can use in the speaking part of attuned listening is, did I get it? Like, is it okay if I share with you what I'm hearing? So, I am hearing, whatever it is, these feelings, these needs, like it sounds like you're feeling blah, blah, blah. It seems like you really are hoping for more, whatever it is, connection, let's say. Did I get it? Is that is that right? Like, did I get it? And the other person will tell you, no, you didn't really get it at all. Or yeah, kind of, but what I really mean is blank, or what I think I'm really frustrated about is blank, or whatever. So it's okay to not fully get it the first time or second time, but the idea is to stay in it long enough that the other person really, really, really feels heard and that you really get it. Now, again, getting it doesn't mean agreeing, because I know we're talking about difficult conversations where you might really disagree, or you might really have a different perspective. Your needs and feelings might be wildly different than the other person's feelings and needs. That's totally okay. Remember, we started at the beginning by saying that the core foundation of NVC is that everybody's needs matter. That includes the other person, and it includes yourself. So we're not going to ignore your feelings and needs. We will get there. It's just that for this first week of our 3-part series, we're starting with trying to really, really get the other person's feelings and needs. And I will say that this is very, very, very hard, especially when it's a topic that is emotional for you. It's hard to stick with what is going on for them because what's going on for you is so present. So we're going to practice again. I'm going to divide you into groups again. It'll be a different set of groups. And this time, it's going to be the same question. What's on your mind these days? You can use the same thing you already said with somebody, or you could say something else, totally up to you. Let me see how much time we have left. We're going to give a little bit more time, more like 7-8 minutes. So you have more like 3 or 4 minutes for each of the people that's speaking. And the person that's in listener mode, this time you want to do the combination of the quiet part and the speaking part, but still as the attuned listening. You're still in this mode of empathy. Your job in this is to focus on that empathetic listening to the other person. Be really curious. What is going on for this person? What are they feeling? What are their needs? What do they value? There's something going on here underneath what they're saying, and you're listening for it. Even if it's not the deepest thing in the world, if I'm just saying, oh gosh, like I'm hungry for lunch, I haven't eaten lunch yet today, like blah, 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 blah. Still, like, okay, get it, like what's underneath that? Maybe you're tired, maybe you're frustrated, maybe you're whatever. There's a whole bunch of other things it could be. So try to stick with the mode. I see your note, Rachel. Thank you. No problem. So we are going to go into these breakout rooms for about 7-8 minutes. So give me just a second so that I can, I'm going to put 8 minutes on the clock. I'm going to recreate the rooms. 1 second. So I can make sure. Okay. So I hope everybody will have a partner. And remember, you get about 3 to 4 minutes to speak. The other person's going to do this reflective listening, empathetic listening. Did I get it? Is there more? Here's what I think I hear you saying. I wonder if you're feeling X, and really try to get at what the other person's saying. And we'll see how it goes. So I'll see you all soon. Hello, welcome back. We'll wait. Everybody else is going to zoom back in just a moment.
Rabbi, how long have you been taking this program or been involved in it?
I've been working on NVC for, gosh, I don't know, many years, at least 5 or 8 years, maybe 10 years. I can't remember when I took my first workshop on it.
That's great. I can't imagine how your children are going to grow up with this basis of how to live among other people. That's going to be amazing.
I know, terrible.
We're trying. All right, here comes everyone.
Okay.
All right, here we all come. All right, welcome back, everybody. So what I want to ask you are two questions that, unfortunately, because our group is so big, we don't have time to share out loud. But if you want to share in writing in the chat, you're welcome to, or just for your own reflection, which is, what did you notice and what surprised you? So either what did you notice or what surprised you from doing this? Go ahead and you can just put it in the chat, or if you want to just for your own self, just think or jot down a note or two. What did you notice? What surprised you? Sandy got to be on with two terrific people, which she enjoyed. That's great. No problem. All right. Well, if you have thoughts, you're welcome to put them in the chat. Let's see. Having someone really listening made me feel like opening up more than I think I would have. Yeah, absolutely. When I pay 100% attention, there are more layers of feelings than I normally hear. Absolutely. I noticed intense connection. I noticed what my habits are. I realized what I typically do. Yeah, sometimes we don't even notice our habits until we really pay attention to them. As Karen said, put me at ease, which I'm guessing was as the speaker, when somebody is reflecting back, it puts you at ease. I could be guessing wrong there, but it is true. When you feel heard, all of a sudden, it's like it lowers the temperature. It was interesting. I could share with an old friend and someone that you didn't know. I felt right there with my partner waiting. I found it was so difficult to not add my own feelings. Yes. Remember, it's super hard to just stay with the other person and where they're at, even though you might have your own feelings. I like the idea of some kind of verbal participation from the listener, right? They don't have to be silent, but the focus, it's like, where's the spotlight, right? The focus is on the other person. I realize I have a lot of work to do with keeping my mouth shut and listening. I noticed my habits, how much we had in common. I noticed I still find myself reflecting and sharing emotion. I noticed genuine connection. I thought the people who are busy had the same frustrations. I'm losing the comments here. How quickly we were able to open up to each other, noticed how much we have in common, noticed falling into habits. It's hard to stop yourself. Lots of people have commented how much they notice their habits and how easy it is to kind of fall into those. Not being expected to give advice and solve something. Oh, this is Karen. Yeah, it puts you at ease. You're not here to like solve any problems or give advice or anything, right? That can put you at ease as the listener too, definitely. I felt more emotion when the listener echoed back, sadness and worry about a college kid going to new home. It was uplifting to express my feelings to someone who was listening and not judgmental. Going back to what David said, yes, when somebody is really reflecting back what they're hearing, you might even feel the thing deeper, but it also, I think, is affirming to know that somebody really hears you and hears what you're feeling. The other person perceiving the underlying feeling that I had not. This happens to me a lot, or somebody says, it sounds like you're feeling X, and I'm like, oh, huh. You know what, I am. Like, I hadn't even realized that, right? I'm just telling my story and I hadn't realized that there was this element of whatever it is that I didn't even notice. So yeah, sometimes when somebody else can reflect back the feelings, that's really an amazing experience. So I wanna wrap up with a couple of things. So the first thing is that one of the goals of NVC is to change the nature of the communication. Most of our conversations with people are like a ping pong game. I say something, you say something, we go back and forth and back and forth. It's a ping pong match. That's true even in just regular, not hard conversations. And the goal of NVC is to slow it down. So that's part of our problem with only having an hour today, but slow down the conversation. It is not a ping pong match. The goal of NVC is that it's more like a piano recital. It's like, now is your turn. Eventually we're gonna get to my turn. So you're gonna have a turn, and I'm gonna have a turn. And then eventually we're gonna figure out where do we go from here. But you're gonna have a turn to put your feelings and needs on the table. I'm gonna have a turn to put my feelings and needs on the table. And then together we're gonna brainstorm kind of where do we go from here. But it's slowing it down so that that spotlight has a chance to really be on one person and the other without it going back and forth like a ping pong match. So the slowing it down is a big, big part of it. And that the goal of NVC is that you get heard, that I get heard, and then we do our best to get creative and see if we can have it all. Can we meet all of our needs in this conversation? Now, sometimes we can't actually. There's some needs on the table that just cannot be met in this conversation. And then there's a mourning process. We mourn the ways that we can't meet everyone's needs, and we commit to keep connecting. The goal of NVC is to maintain the relationship, is to be able to communicate in a way that maintains relationship, even if we can't meet both of our needs, Is there a way that we can still be in conversation, in relationship with one another? And the takeaway that I hope you take from this, among a bunch of other things, is that we are always, always, always a bundle of met and unmet needs, and that all actions are attempts to meet needs. So even an action that drives you nuts is an attempt to meet some kind of needs. And especially with kids, we're like, they need attention, they need attention. Well, attention's not the only need that could be unmet. It could be one of them. It's true for adults too, right? But all actions are attempts to meet needs. And part of the goal in this kind of communication is to surface, what are those needs? What are those feelings? And are there different strategies that we could think of to try to meet those needs, or try to acknowledge the feelings that are in this, in this situation? So that's for today. It's 1 o'clock. I want to give you a brief kind of preview of the next 2 weeks. Next week, we are going to focus on the underneath part of the conversation, which again, I learned as mindful inner world, meaning what's going on in me while the conversation is happening. That's what we're going to focus on. What are the pieces that we need to be aware of? How do we do it? While I'm doing all my listening to you, how do I also deal with what's going on inside me? So that's what we're going to focus on in week 2. And in week 3, we're going to focus on the speaking part, the attuned speaking, empowered speaking. And then at the end of week 3, we'll do kind of a putting it all together, wrapping it up. I will say that when I first learned NVC, we also started with attuned listening because it's so powerful and really, frankly, very uncommon in the way we communicate with each other. And what our teacher recommended that we do this with a listening buddy. It could be if you have a spouse or partner, it could be a friend, but if there's somebody who you can have as an attuned listening buddy, and you sometime between now and next week, schedule a time, schedule 15 minutes, half hour, however long you want, where each person gets a certain amount of time to share something, and the other person's only role is attuned listening, is just to listen for feelings and needs. It's very powerful for both people. It's very powerful for the speaker to be heard in that way. It's also very powerful to be the listener, to try to experience what it's like to really listen for somebody else's needs and feelings, and not do any of those other things of giving advice or encouragement or my story or any of the rest. So it can be a really important and powerful experience. It's practice. This takes a lot of practice. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I am still learning and still, not always great at this. So the more that you practice, the easier and more natural it becomes. So I want to encourage you, it could be somebody who's on this call because you've all done this training, to say, hey, do you want to be my buddy? Let's take 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, and spend a little bit of time doing this listening exercise. So that's what I want to encourage you. And if you haven't already printed out the needs and feelings lists, I encourage you to do so. Put them somewhere in your house. It's very, very helpful to have that language handy. And so I think that's where we're going to wrap up. So if you want to unmute yourself as we say our goodbyes, thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today and to be part of this course. And I hope it will be helpful to all of you.
Thank you, Rabbi Greninger.
Very much.
Bye, Greninger.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rabbi.
everyone.